Ladies and gentlemen, big tariff news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora Chippy.
Kia ora, Pat.
Kia ora Nala. No, doesn't talk back, that one. I'm just doing it now because she'll probably leave, and you know, Chippy, they only come for the dogs.
It's true.
That's the only reason that
That's
they're
true.
here. So we thought we'd just get that out there. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Middle of my week. So I am surviving more than thriving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a daylight savings is a mantra to do this stuff because, you know, I start editing at the end of the show. And so last night my body's saying, why are you starting editing at 10 past 12? Even though it was 10 past 11, but my body didn't know that. And so, yes, it's an interesting time, especially in the deep south where it gets darker earlier in the winter as well. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Lots going on tonight. We have two guests joining us tonight. Tamatha Paul is in the waiting room waiting, so we won't arse around too much. I want to say a huge thanks to our patrons. If you want to be a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hero News. As I said, there's some redesigning of the Patreons going on this week. We're going to change up some of the levels, some of the people who are due some merch, and I haven't got around to it because I'm pathetic. Will be hearing from me this week. And we're going to do a little bit of jiggery pokery in the back end of that, along with a website being built at the moment. Again, I'm taking too long to get back to the lovely people who are working on the website. So forgive me, people, if you're watching. And I have emailed you guys today, all of you at one stage. And then, of course, always the merch is up and running at the moment. We have got everything available. The new ones are still going to go up this week. We're going to bring back the Pride buffer for a limited run because people have said they want to bring it back. We are developing a fuck around and find out as well, which will be up. Both of those things will be up at some stage this week, just in time for the weekend. So it's up sometime this week. I'll put them up at 11:55 p.m. on Friday night, and then I will stand by that or something like that. So yeah, that's about it. So is there anything else to reply? I see someone's already got in there with the chats and done a not late super chat. How about that? Not late fee.
Somebody says, "Oh, it looks cold down here." It literally snowed in central Otago today.
Right.
So I think Cadrona got something like 5 centimeters of snow overnight. It is cold. It's cold. Shit.
XLD, just before we get going, has a late fee with a tariff attached. So what's our tariff, Joe? That means if that's 50 cents, is that for 25%?
Well,
25% on $2.50.
We have to ask Elon's AI what our trade trade deficit is between ourselves and that in particular person. Lie about it and then say they started it. So yeah. It's complex.
The reciprocal tariffs for countries that had no tariffs on them. Is that what you're talking about? Speaking of, Craig Renney is going to join us around 9:30 as well, talking about Nicola Willis today going, it's not a very good forecast for the economy. How much of that rests at the feet of literally the tariffs and what's happening in the world economy right now. $4 trillion wiped off the American stock exchange over the last 24 hours. Do they have a hand to play in this? You know, when you take all that money out of your coffers, you don't save a bit for a rainy day. Is that a part of it? You know that we're just rodeo clowns here. Craig Renney's not. He'll explain it all to us at about 9:30. And then later on tonight, we'll look at Chippy on breakfast this morning as well. But let's stop stuffing around and let us welcome to the show. It's only bloody Tamatha Paul. Kia ora, Tamatha.
Kia ora.
How are you
going?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you doing? What's going on in your world? What's that greenery? This is the greens have to have some kind of native plants in the shots. That's part of the rules.
Not a native, sadly.
It is a fruit salad plant.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a monstera. This alone is probably worth like $200. This one leaf.
Hey, We have had a lot of fun in the last 24 hours, thanks to, well, not really thanks to you, but on some level because of you. The world's best advertising campaign, paid for by the Sensible Sentencing Trust, has been just something to behold. And I saw a little Instagram from you today. It does look like you're sitting on the naughty step a little bit, just the naughty seat in the corner, but I know you're not. And you had a bit of a message to people who are putting up those sorts of advertisements.
I don't actually care what you think because the people are with me, and so you can't get rid of me, and you won't.
Yeah. And was it the sound of the police in the background? Was it playing in the background of that one?
Yeah, that's a clip from Marae. So I was on Marae on Sunday on TV1, and I just thought that was a good way to summarize it, really.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun. I mean, what we really want to talk about as well is the old defund the police slogan, what it means, because what the opposition to your messaging is obviously saying straight away, it means that we're going to cancel all of the police and there'll be no police left. That's what they say. But just before we go there, I kind of want to ask you about the campaign. Like, Sensible Sentencing Trust put this up. Has this been a net positive for you guys? What do you personally think about being the poster girl for the Sensible Sentencing Trust on some level?
Well, I think the Sensible Sentencing Trust are a bunch of idiots, if we're going to be straight up. They don't know how to read. They don't understand why judges don't give long sentences anymore. I doubt any of them have stepped foot in a prison before. Don't think they're living in reality land and understanding that rehabilitation doesn't happen in prison. So putting people in there for longer is going to make people more hostile and more aggressive when they inevitably come back out into the community. But I've heard them come and talk to us about 3 strikes and the Sentencing Reform Act, and there's no brain cells behind what they're doing anyway. So I wasn't surprised to see this billboard, but I think it just also shows that they have no understanding of Wellington City either. Like, if they think putting this up in Wellington City is going to be some kind of a hit job, we'll see how that goes next year. I remember when I was running for local body, I had a whole bunch of anonymous flyers that were delivered to every house in the ward from kind of heritage crazies who were just like really against us densifying Wellington City, and that also backfired because that ended up with me getting enough votes to elect 2.5 people. So I don't think they understand how these kinds of things backfire. But for me, I was like, free promo shot.
This may 2 questions actually. Do you remember who came in and submitted in this? Because it used to be Garth McVicker back about 1 million years ago, and we've read a press release yesterday from about 12 months ago where they're like, we're trying to reboot Sensible Sentencing Trust. Do you know who's behind it now? Like, do you remember the person that came and submitted?
It was some middle-aged man. He was very emotional and deranged. Their whole basis behind their arguments have always been taking the worst possible, most horrific nightmare cases and claiming that that's what we should base our justice system on, which is absolutely laughable. I don't think any credible judge, lawyer would ever back any of their statements because they're just fearmongers, and they just, I wouldn't be surprised if they're getting money from their prison industrial complex mates who profit from brown poor people being funneled into our justice system. So there's just a bunch of idiots.
The question you kind of posed there at the end is one we asked last night. This is a group that used to function, I think, with a fair amount of funding back in the early 2000s under Garth McVicker. Then they disappeared
everywhere.
Yeah, then they disappeared after they tried to support Bruce Emery, who was a guy who murdered a teenage boy for spray painting his fence. That's when they kind of disappeared. They started to come back again about 12 months ago, it would appear. And now they've got enough money to do these kinds of billboards. They're not going to be cheap. This is an organization that's basically has got no following, has got no presence, and they're paying for these things. I also, like you, wonder where is their money coming from. It would be interesting to find out.
Well, I never in any of my campaigns had the money to get those big billboards on those big buildings. So, you got to get it somehow. And also, I'll be giving them more things to put on billboards so they can go hard. But it's so crazy, right? Because I've never said the words defund the police.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about
Yeah.
that shortly. The last thing
So-
though is we're going to obviously I've already talked about this. We're going to try and see if we can figure out how to get that on some merch, because that'll be good for you guys, and maybe include a charity or something and do something with it anyway, because how much more beautiful is it? The definition of being hoisted by your own petard, if your attack advertising turns into something that supports and helps the people you're trying to attack, I think it would be fantastic. Anyway,
Yeah, I think it's a good
defunding the
idea.
police. So you've never ever said defunding the police privately or publicly? It's not a phrase you've used?
I've used other phrases around the police, but can't recall saying defund the police. And it's just ironic coming from this group too, because that is exactly what this government is doing. So
Yeah,
it's
100%.
like a complete deflection from what's actually going on here. And every day for the last 2 weeks, this government has been using their questions and question times to ask questions about the police. Actually, I got sent a few videos of the Prime Minister walking around Wellington Central with a beat patrol, just looked like an absolute pariah. Nobody wanted to talk to them. It's just like wrong city, mate. Like wrong city. But yeah, it's just been a little bit embarrassing. But I guess looking at the news stories that have come out in the last 20 minutes, I can understand why they're trying to deflect from their own chaos going on within the government.
I don't mean to be the one in the dark here. What's come out in the last 20 minutes? I've been preparing a show.
Oh, just different allegations around government MPs
Oh,
and what they get up to in their
yes.
free time.
Are you talking about, I saw something on the news about a religious cult. Are you talking about that one, or is there others?
Yeah, the national MP for Ilam is part of some really sussy, culty sounding Christian offshoot. Is that the
Yeah.
story that you're talking about?
Not really even surprising though. I mean, there's some very extremely questionable MPs within the government, but do they get the same level of scrutiny? Absolutely not.
Yeah, not that we're going to talk about this tonight, because I think you guys are still figuring it all out. But there are other episodes of the last week or so where the public have been able to decide what they think on not having all the information. So if there is that kind of stuff going on, Tamatha, with other MPs, maybe we should figure out how to release some of that and let the public go crazy on it and see what happens with it. Just saying. So let's look at this. So the way I understand defunding the police, the term is used in America. I don't think it's a particularly good phrase to use, only because it creates confusion amongst people. But what my understanding of it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tamatha, about the American example, is they're talking about taking some of the money that normally gets allocated to police and allocating it to different bodies, different groups, different entities that might be better to deal with a situation that the police are currently being called to. For example, if someone is having a mental health issue, maybe rather than sending a man there with a gun, it might be better to send someone who is a crisis, someone who knows about crisis mental health issues. That's how I understand defund the police in the American sense. Have I got that right? Is that as you understand it?
I don't know about the American context specifically, but that's certainly where my comments came from, in that I don't think that the police are the best people to deal with a lot of the situations that they're dealing with, because they don't have the right training or expertise to de-escalate situations. That's not to say that they can't and they don't, but there have been lots of muck-ups, high-profile muck-ups that we've seen in the media, but also it was a major reflection within the Understanding Police Delivery report that came out late last year, which talked about the fact that police are not equipped to dealing with responding to people in states of mental health distress. And when you're living in a country where poverty is skyrocketing and where, the use of methamphetamine has doubled in the last year, you're going to need people who actually can respond appropriately to those who are in those severe states of distress, and that's not the police. And maybe we should think about resourcing people who can be better responders in those situations. And there are other examples where I think police are not the best equipped to respond to those situations. I'm thinking of people who take sexual violence and stalking allegations to the police and have had negative experiences because they're not believed and they're laughed at. But there are a range of different areas which I think the police are out of their depth. But that's the kind of country that we live in, where it's far easier to throw money at the police and to throw money at building more prisons and hiring more corrections officers than it is to actually invest in preventative areas that do make our community safer, such as health, such as education. You know, all of these areas that are chronically underfunded and crumbling even further under this government.
Just a little side note as well. I can't remember who it was, but there was an expert on the news last week talking about the increase in meth. And he said, I am going to paraphrase, but he says, we've never seen a spike like this anywhere in the world. So that says under this government, meth usage has had its biggest spike in the history of the world like nowhere else, which is an interesting exercise to get into it as well as to why and what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising to me because we know that drug use skyrockets where there is misery and poverty and where people don't feel that they have any hope or prospect in their life. And so they, of course, will turn to things that helps them to blunt that reality for them. And I'm thinking about, you look at the way that homelessness has increased by 50% in Auckland, massively within Wellington, and I believe there's some data about Christchurch or Dunedin, and I think it was Dunedin, and the way that homelessness is growing massively. Of course, that coincides with an increase of drug use, because would you not also want to blunt your reality when you're sleeping on a cold street under the rain and wind, being kicked and spat at and looked at in that way, and that's your every single day? I'd want to escape that as well. So they coincide. And you look at things like the gang patch ban and the increase in people in prison, and I don't think people understand that when you're putting lots of people in the same place, that is increasing their numbers of connections, that is helping them to be better criminals and to operate more efficiently in terms of their distribution of drugs. So you kind of, it's the perfect storm in creating a crisis. And the scary thing is that we haven't even seen more serious drugs hit our shores to the extent they are present in countries like America. So I'm thinking about fentanyl and other drugs that we haven't even really, that hasn't even hit us yet, but it will, because again, people are able to capitalize off of the misery of others, and having so much poverty makes things far worse.
Chewy, jump in, sir.
First of all, I'm going to acknowledge the fact that people can hear your cat purring, and
No.
it is
Dog snoring. Dog snoring.
I did a dog snoring. Even better. There we go. There was a rapid debate going on in the chat.
This is who we are.
We're imagining in it. Or not.
Have you got Elva?
That's
Is
right.
Elva anywhere? Chewy, is yours around as well?
No. Elva's snubbing me as she always does.
I saw those, and I knew, because Tamatha asked me before, can they hear the dog snoring? And I'm like, no, I can't hear anything. And then in the chat, well, can you hear a cat purring?
Amazing. Sounded amazing. Look, I want to talk about, like, if your life is going so bad that you're sleeping on the streets and that sort of thing, and maybe you have had several bad run-ins with the police. When the police turn up again and you have nothing to lose, what's your reaction going to be? So maybe having someone there that is not the police, you know, the police are standing back and sort of, but they send somebody else in to actually have a chat and try and de-escalate things. That just sounds sensible to me. But the people that are zeroing in on this, and I think co-opting that language of defund the police, because that absolutely, as Pat says, massively backfired in the States. And we want to take those cultural elements from what happens over in the States, because we're always watching what's happening over there, and we want to bring it over there, jam some words in your mouth and go, ha, checkmate. We don't need to talk about the very sensible parts of what you were discussing, which was literally like, this doesn't seem to be working. What other things could we try? Which, coming out of any other corner of the debate, would be like, yeah, that sounds sensible. Let's look at other options. It's just remarkable that you have been the focus point of so what is it like to be the focus point of something that seemed like a pretty intense week of media coverage and public commentary and all of that sort of thing. Did you feel like it was in your control to sort of get your message out there, or was it just like, how the hell do I respond to this?
Well, I think the thing that was difficult for me is that I can think of 3 people who have made similar sentiments around policing and prisons in the last year. Andrew Costa, the police commissioner, on his way out. Peter Boshier, the ombudsman, on his way out, and during his tenure as the ombudsman, and Sir Ron Young, who just made those comments on Q&A around sentencing. And I'm not saying that they said exactly what I've said, but they've basically said the same things over the last year. Was there scrutiny on what they had said? Absolutely not. And yeah, I guess, what does it feel like being at the center of that? Well, one big thing that people have been saying to me is, that especially some of your more old school activists, is that they've been saying these things for a long time, particularly around the police. And this is not a new concept by any means. And so the focus on it, I mean, I guess it kind of is what it is. I don't think it's been so much of a bad thing, though. Like, I think it's been worthwhile because it has started a massive nationwide conversation about the police. And to me, that's a win. I feel like there's 2 different types of media attention you can get in a kind of negative light. And one is on politics and the other is on personal things. And so for me, the political focus has been all good, because it's like, I just turn my phone off when I get home, all good. And then that's that. And I can wake up the next morning and keep going. But yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that was really hard in the first week of all the coverage was when the media, and particularly the Herald, were trying to imply that I was lying about the original complaints about the beat patrols packing up homeless people stuff and putting it in the bin, and having the Salvation Army come out and say, well, we never made those comments in an official capacity. And it's like, okay, so when I meet with your frontline workers, would you like me to ignore everything they say then, because it's not within an official capacity, because you didn't put it in a letter and send it to me, And I remember calling the worker that told me about those concerns in the first place, and he said, no, that is what I talked to you about. And the other thing that you should know is that the relationship between the Beat Patrol and homeless people is so hostile that they won't even say hello to people who are rough sleeping, and that represents the relationship that they have. And so that was frustrating, because that angle from the media is an attack on character. And I think that one is quite hard, because it's like, why would I say something that's so unpopular with most people for fun? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, I would just keep my mouth shut if it wasn't what I was seeing and hearing about, so.
But I mean, what you said is unchallengeably true. Like,
Yeah.
even if there's no research, and I'll just, like we did last week, which there is, this is the police report. Even if there was no research, the statement, and you said some, because we played it several times, some people feel less safe with more police being around. That's actually unchallengeable, because it's going to be true. For people who went with us last week, this is a report on the report, and it talks about, this is from the police processes. Cumulative experiences are still getting in the way of fair, equitable policing, according to their new report. Independent panel has been researching police engagement with Māori, Pacifica, disabled people, rainbow communities. I won't read it out again, but the point that you kind of brought out was, quote, the communities most at risk did not feel they were well served by police, instead seeing them as a threat to their safety. Childhood police interactions in particular were seen to compound the ongoing distrust. So there is actual police research, as you said, which says that. And I'm also wondering, how did you feel? Because we had Kieran McElnulty on our Sunday night show a couple of weeks ago, and Samar from Aotearoa Liberation League had a crack, man. And we were also all kind of going, but we're traveling in this direction together. We might be in different boats, but we're all going in the same direction. It kind of feels like that, Chippy shat all over a teammate here. How did it feel from your side when from where we were sitting, it looked like he was kind of shitting on you a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first read it, I just obviously, saw his comments. That was frustrating because it's like, okay, white man who's literally sued the police for infringing on his human rights and got paid out for it. That's not an experience that anybody I know has ever had, but good on you, mate. I'm glad that restored your faith in the justice system. But now I've seen that he's been criticized quite heavily. I get a lot of the correspondence that people have been sending to him, complaining, and just all the comments, like his social media. It's just like, oh, mate, don't do that.
The BHN whānau, not happy.
We heard that Chippy kind of reached across the aisle a bit. Did that happen to the Greens? Did he reach across and kind of go, oh, okay, sorry about that? Did you hear any of that?
Oh, he didn't say that to me, but I sort of thought about it that week, and I thought, I just don't feel like people who are hating this government want to see us scrapping with each other. And so I just let a lot of it slide, because I'm like, that's just like, when I first read it, I thought, well, if it's a Labour-led government, they definitely won't let me be the Minister of Police. But, I just didn't want to like feed into it, because I knew that that's not what people want to see. People want to see us like working together and stuff. So, I mean...
Doesn't it suck a little bit? And I'm not saying you guys back down, but having to be the grown-ups in the room all the time. You know what I mean? Like the Greens tax policy before the last election was the best tax policy out of any of the parties. And it seems that, what's the co-popper here? You want to move together and move forward together and be united and doesn't it get a bit frustrating sometimes to sort of have to be the ones that go, we'll just let this go this time for the betterment of the whole community?
Kind of, but I think the thing with Law and Order and Labour is that my expectations were already low. Like when I became an MP, we were just wrapping up the Ram Raid bill, which they created before the 2023 election as a last-ditch attempt to win middle New Zealand votes by punishing our kids and making it legal to charge 12, 13 and 14-year-olds and collect bodily samples from them and all sorts of messed up kind of stuff. And so it's not like my expectations of Labour's criminal justice policies was high in the first place. So I wasn't even surprised when I read Chippy's comments, and I thought that is an area that we need to pull them closer to the evidence, bring them towards the evidence and actually get them to listen.
One of the things that I said in the wake of that is that in the search for comment, Hipkins ended up basically being in lockstep with what Luxon was saying and being very much aimed at not just what you said, but what they thought of you. And I was like, this is a trap that Hipkins needs to avoid. That, sure, he might not go as far left or as far radical as you are, but he should never, ever, ever end up in the same place that Luxon is. He should, if he wants to take a contrary position, he should be halfway between you and Luxon at all times, not racing to occupy the same comments that Luxon's making.
I think there's definitely ways of disagreeing with people's points without just being a dick, like saying
the word choice was not it was not the vibe.
Hey, I've got one more question for you, and it's so funny that you've already used this saying it'll never, because I've written on a piece of paper you as police minister. I mean, you're the spokesperson for justice. That's your portfolio here. In the next government, if it was a Labour-led government, and that would be the scenario for the Greens to get back in as well. I mean, it's unlikely that Labour is going to outnumber the Greens at the next election, maybe in the future, but the chances are it'll be a Labour-led government. And let's just say hypothetically you did get that portfolio, like you guys negotiated it post. How would you operate differently from Mark Mitchell?
Well, I would be far more intelligent than Mark Mitchell. I mean, I was going to say the bro. The guy doesn't even know what systemic bias is. That's the level of, and he never has anything intelligent to say. Like, all these questions that have been wasted in the House, and he just says the same thing over and over again. The police do a world-class job. Like, that's all he says every time. He's got nothing constructive to add to any debate, no facts, no data, no nothing. And so how would I do things differently? Well, I'd be going in there and we would be changing a lot. Like, there would be some hard scrutiny at the way that the police carry out their work. And also I would relinquish a lot of power and discretion that the police have. There's too much. They've got too much power and discretion to do their jobs. And I think it's that space that lies within that discretion is where you're getting all of the bad outcomes, because you're leaving it to like regular people to make judgments about other human beings that I don't think they're capable of making. And that is why you see an overrepresentation of some people with the police and others not. Like, for example, in the Understanding Police Delivery report, it also said that Māori were 11% more likely to be charged with the same offences as non-Māori. To be charged with the same offence as non-Māori. So that needs to be sorted out. That needs to be sorted out. And again, it would be a relinquishing of some functions that I don't think the police are capable of dealing with and shouldn't be the ones to be dealing with that. And I feel like they wouldn't mind. Like, don't you agree that wouldn't the police agree that they are overworked and under-resourced as well? And that maybe they would have far better jobs if they weren't focusing on things that they are not trained to do.
Yeah. Like, that's all very, very scary, I think, Tamatha. The people are going to freak out and go, oh no, not sense, not research, not logic, please, anything but. So, hey man, it's been awesome talking to you. Always is. We've got
Thanks,
Craig waiting in our waiting room now, so we're going to shoot. Is there anything else you want to leave us with, just as we're leading up to the next few days, or anything we need to know about?
I'm going to be doing a speech in the House tomorrow, hopefully, about all of this stuff that's been going on. But interesting, got some fresh data today. I don't know if you saw, but the thing that kicked off all of this scrutiny was a comment that I made about the prison population, and that a majority of people in prison were there for non-violent offences.
Yep.
And Mark Mitchell made all these TikToks and stuff like that with this corrections graph, which is a snapshot of who's in corrections on any given day and what offences they're in there for. And he used that as his kind of argument about why I was wrong. I got some data back today that showed that of all the people that moved through prison in 2023, and 68% of those people were there for non-violent offences. And in 2024, 65% were there for non-violent offences. So, it's like you can have all the stats and all the data, but they still will insist that you're crazy. So,
well, we don't think you're crazy. You're crazy cool, Tamatha, but not crazy. Hey, dude, thanks for being with us tonight. We'll shoot now and stay in touch, and we'll be in touch about that merch. See if we can raise some funds for some stuff with that thankfully beautiful Sensible Sentencing Trust billboard that they made.
Yeah, although I did just see Bloody Samoan Michael did a really great animation as well tonight.
He always gets in quick, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does. All right, Tamatha. Thanks for your time, man. We'll talk soon, eh?
See you later.
Mate.
All the best.
Bye.
Excellent. Okay, we've got Craig in the room, but there's a ton of super chats in there as well. Let's just get through these.
God, there's so many.
Yeah, I know, but it's based on this story. Craig's okay to wait. He's a lovely chap. Tiffany says, no justice on stolen land. Defund New Zealand Police. Defund the police equals fund communities. Health, housing, and education prevent harm, not cops. Kiwi Bird, thank you for your super chat. Craig, there's one for Craig. Oh, let's leave that, eh? I did just pretend you didn't see that, Fano. I messed that up. It's one for Craig.
Secrets.
Sensible sentences, shit at trolling and spending. It's so funny, eh? Well, another one from Tiffany. Redirect funding from batons to beds, from guns to... Look, someone's getting out with his... we're going to send this off to the Greens for their election campaign. From guns to groceries, it's that simple, because really the police protect capitalism, not you and I.
Speaking of sloganeering, I saw an excellent one. I believe this was from the Greens as well, regarding the defence spending discussion that we were having last night. Drones, not homes. Well, I thought it was very good.
Kiwi Bird, sensible Sentencing Trust, please keep making Green Party billboards. Tiffany's been like 5 times, I reckon. The system is by design. The issue can't fix that. Is by design. The issue can't fix that. Another one, Tiffany. It only creates confusion if you come from a place of privilege. If you aren't a white guy, there is no confusion at all. Google New Zealand constabulary for one. Kiwi Bird, police are not a one-stop shop for problem solving. It's in the ballot. Those who are honest and doing the right often are targeted by those how misunderstood and jump off the deep. We experienced this in Local Bodies 2023. Another one from ballot. Oh, it's the same one, word for word. Look at that. I was doing 2 different ones there. Kaimatara. Red, white, and blue are colonizer colours. We haven't heard one from Tiffany tonight, so it's good that he sent one through finally because we were waiting. If you don't understand the fundamental sentiment of defund the police, it's because it's not about you. Okay. Be an ally, but stop trying to speak our truth for us. Labour are moderate class traders, not leftists. Another from Kai Matara. Meet me in the middle, says the unjust man. You take a step towards him, he takes a step back. Meet me in the middle, says the unjust man, equals Labour. All right. Some non-Labour fans out there, that's all right. There we go. I'm just deleting things. You got anything you want to say? Oh, that was quite funny as well. I did those. Kitty, weird personal. It wasn't, it was a dog. Pretty funny.
That was amazing. It sounded like a cat though. That was excellent.
She said his name was Biggie. I mean, Biggie Smalls, and she went, no, Biggie Paul. Like, oh, okay. That's the name of the dog.
Oh, right. That's so good.
Let's welcome to the show for our next topic tonight. We've got no work to do tonight, Chewy. Everyone can do the work
That's
for
right.
us. It's only bloody Craig Renney. Hey, Craig. Hey, man.
G'day.
It's been
Long
forever
time no
since
see.
we've talked, Craig. It's been forever. I don't know when we last got together, you and I. Oh, there's a joke. We had a meeting today about Craig's new podcast. I think we should remind people about your new podcast at the end of the show. But let's get on with the business of things at the moment, because we're going to watch a part of the story together. And this was, I haven't seen this story because I watched One News tonight, but this one's a bit shorter. I think between us, a bit shorter is probably better. But there has been a bunch of drama today. Nicola Willis starting to talk down the economy moving forward. And there is a link to the Trump tariffs. This is probably what we want to talk to Craig about. How much to do with the tariffs? How much is it to do with emptying the coffers with tax cuts and landlord money being thrown away? Like, didn't keep anything for a rainy day. It's fucking raining. But we'll get onto that towards the end. We'll just play a little bit of this through and get the gist of the story.
Keeping calm and carrying on as economies worldwide are flung into chaos by Trump's tariff tornado.
It is clear we are witnessing a historically significant global economic event.
And this is not necessarily the history you want to be witnessing as a finance minister. Markets in freefall, the New Zealand dollar plummeting.
And this happens just as we have been gathering positive momentum and recovering from a period of high inflation and high interest rates.
Economic carnage.
Hey, Craig, I don't want to jump in with a 10-minute conversation now,
Mm-hmm.
but it's fair to say, isn't it, that if everything had have lined up perfectly, National's plan could have kind of gotten through. But we always said one cyclone, one emergency, one outbreak of coronavirus, one thing could throw everything into disarray because they haven't kept anything in the coffers. Is that fair? And is that what we're seeing?
National's plan could have got through, but you wouldn't have felt any benefit. So National's plan would have been to deliver a tax cut, which they did. National's plan would have been to essentially use cuts to the public services to pay for that tax cut, which they did. To them, their plan was working. They didn't have a plan for you, Pat, or for you, Chewy, about actually making you better off, because that's not what they care about. At the next election, they'd be offering you another tax cut in the hope that you would take that, and then we would just rinse and repeat the cycle again. So their plan was working. It's just you weren't part of their plan.
Well, and now their plan was working for, let's say, the top 10 or 20%, but those are also the people who more often than not own things like shares and investments. And now this is now not working for them.
And
with
certainly
what's
we're
going
seeing
on.
that, and certainly we're seeing that in the US, where even some of Donald Trump's strongest supporters are now coming out and saying, hang on, perhaps we've made a mistake. In New Zealand, we've seen political characters come out who have supported national, who perhaps in the past have supported the Republicans as part of the American campaigns, now saying, perhaps tariffs weren't the way to go. And because they're essentially losing large amounts of money. Now, don't get me wrong. For some of them, Crimea River, because they had very large amounts of money, and they've now got marginally less amounts of money. So they'll survive. The challenge will come 3, 6, 12 months from now, when that filters through to the real economy, and we start seeing unemployment and we start seeing other challenges, because that money has essentially just disappeared.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going to the story.
Put simply, the past week's global developments make our recovery harder.
Not what our old boss, former Prime Minister John Key, predicted before Trump's election.
Remember, we played that, Chili? We played the things that John Key said, and he was saying he would vote for Key. He'd be better for the economy, yada, 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 yada.
I think he's better for the economy.
Oh, there you go.
Was he right?
I think that John Key was a great Prime Minister, but like many great people, that doesn't mean he gets everything right.
The government engaging crisis leader mode.
This week, we have seen a profound shift in the global economic landscape.
The Prime Minister reading from a prepared statement, then repeating it in front of the flags for his social audience.
Yes, we're entering choppy waters, but we step into that from a very strong base. In short, New Zealand's best days actually lie ahead of us.
Finance Minister summoned media to her office for an economic briefing.
This is not a time to dramatically change direction.
7th floor, Craig? 7th floor? Are we right?
7.6. Yep.
7.6. All right, just a second.
It is a time to stay the course.
But attempting to reassure New Zealanders that carnage is not the only outcome.
In some cases, it is possible this will provide New Zealand exporters with a comparative advantage. It could also lead to falling prices for some of the products we import.
The Prime Minister defining himself as the poster boy for free trade.
And so my commitment is that my government and I will be the biggest advocates for free trade on the world stage.
As the government seeks to project an image of having the situation in hand.
The world is changing. The government's focus on lifting the performance of the economy has not. We are aware. We are prepared. We've got this.
The opposition is not convinced.
Trust us, we've got this. Is not an economic strategy.
In fact, wasn't it a Jacinda Ardern slogan, just quietly? Yep. Wasn't it literally the Jacinda Ardern, be kind, we've got this?
Yep.
And didn't they laugh and mock and, go, oh, be kind, we've got this, really? Okay, let's just hear it again.
Economy has not. We are aware. We are prepared. We've got this.
The opposition is not convinced.
Trust us, we've got this. Is not an economic strategy. I think New Zealanders are rightly quite worried about what's happening around the world at the moment.
Willis is due to deliver her second budget in 6 weeks and is confident the government will not need to alter it.
We are sticking to the fiscal strategy. We have confidence we can stick to the operating allowances that we've previously communicated, and that our intention to return to surplus in 27-28 remains the right one.
Was there any consideration given to changing that operating allowance?
Well, I've always said that the operating allowance is a ceiling, not a floor. So we won't exceed the operating allowance.
But as market volatility reigns supreme, the only certainty seems to be uncertainty.
That'll do. We won't do the stand-up afterwards. All right, Craig, can you translate all that conversation for us? Because we're dumb. We don't know what's going on.
Well, I mean, let me give it a bash. So the markets are in absolute turmoil. Before I start, would it be helpful if I explain do people know what a tariff is? Do people know how they work?
Well, we have explained it, but we're a couple of radio clowns from Dunedin. So why don't you give it to us again in case anyone out there, or if we got it wrong, Craig?
Oh, probably not. So a tariff is just a tax on any physical good that comes into a country. So normally you don't see tariffs on on services. So if you go to the bank and use a financial service, there usually isn't a tariff on that. It's usually on a something you can see and feel that comes into a country. Oil, food, other cars, and it's just a tax at the point of entry, and it just puts the price up in terms of that good. And the intention is that you put the prices up so that your own domestic consumers and your own domestic producers have more of a chance of selling those goods in your country, and that's it.
So we've basically been saying widget turns up to the wharf, you buy it, for the importer pays $10 for it, walks away. With a tariff, widget turns up to the wharf. Now it costs $10 plus $5 for the tariff on top, so it costs them $15. So when they used to make $10 on it, it would be sold for $20 because that's buy for 10, sell for 20. Now buy for 10, tax for 5, sell for 25. Price goes up in the shop.
Yeah, or if you're working on a ratio or a percentage, it actually goes up more. Because your profit margin may well be a percentage. And so if it goes up by $10, then it's essentially your profit margin goes up by $10. So it could be even more than that.
Yeah. So if you're making 100% on $10, then if it's now $15 and you still want the 100%, it's $15 more.
Correct.
So it'd be 30. Yeah. Right. Wow.
So,
okay.
So as a consequence, you're now, so it depends upon what you're doing. But as some of your people are asking in the chat, there aren't usually tariffs on digital goods. There aren't usually tariffs on things you can't see and feel, because there's no way of actually being able to mark the transaction or being able to physically tax the good on the way through. Now, what Trump has done, he's put on reciprocal tariffs, as he calls them. Now, unfortunately, if you're coming to me for sense as to why those reciprocal tariffs were and are and how they've been calculated, I'm afraid you're in the wrong part of town. Because there is no sense at all about how they have been done. Essentially, the list of countries chosen for the tariffs, some of them aren't countries, some of them are uninhabited.
Yeah, the one with penguins in it. There's one down south of us that's got 0 people in it.
Yeah, the Heard Islands has some penguins and Seal Island and some seals, but not a lot of exports. But what they do relate to are internet domain names. So each country has its own, each territory has its own internet domain. So it seems like someone at the White House, rather than actually knowing the list of countries, has used the list of country internet domains and has used that to derive the tariffs. Now, in terms of the way in which those tariffs then work, I could show you a very complicated equation, which is frankly meaningless. Or let me just give you an example from New Zealand.
Okay.
So New Zealand exports around $5.6 billion US dollars of goods to the US every year. The trade deficit between New Zealand and the US, so the gap between what the US sells us and what we sell the US, is $1.1 billion. So that means the deficit is 19.64% of the total value of the goods that we sold to the US. That's where this 20% number turns up. Trump then said he was going to tariff half of that number. So that's how we end up with a 10% tariff. Are you following along?
Right. Yeah, well, I'm understanding what you're saying, but it's hard to fathom.
Yeah, because it's an utterly meaningless calculation.
Yeah.
So let's, for example, assume you decided to buy a Holden that was made in Australia.
Yep.
Yep. Now, that trade deficit is now dollars from New Zealand going to Australia. Yeah. But many of the parts for that Holden, because it's a General Motors vehicle, are made in the US and shipped to Australia. So Australia now has a negative trade deficit with the US, but we're buying those parts made in Australia. So we're basically buying them from the US. Can you see how now meaningless the trade deficits are? Because many of the goods that are purchased around the world are actually component parts made up of lots of transactions around the world.
Yeah.
So the raw trade deficit is a fairly pointless number.
and before I think there's no tariffs on Mexico and Canada. I think that's the case. But before they were doing that, the point that some people were making was a vehicle built in the US crosses those borders 7 times before it gets sold in the US, and that would have to be tariff. So yeah.
And we had this in the UK during Brexit, where there were car plants in the UK that were taking part-assembled vehicles from Europe, putting motors in, putting different parts in, and then sending them back to Europe, or backwards and forwards. And at each point in time, we had to sign paperwork and documentation, and it slowed trade right down.
Yeah.
So the total value of all of the exports that we give to the US in New Zealand dollars is about $9 billion. And so that you're looking at about $900 million in new taxes on those exports.
The other thing that they did, and I'm not going to play it because it'll get us not kicked off YouTube, but demonetized and stuff, is last week Tonight did a very good piece on it where they showed the board that Trump was holding up and how they worked out the tariffs to be utter nonsense. Like you were saying, the exports minus, and so someone actually worked out what the formula was. And then when the White House was challenged on it, they said, no, this is the formula for working it out. And when they showed that formula, it's exactly what the person worked it out to be. So that formula is the imports minus exports divided by the number of exports or whatever it was, is actually that formula. So they said, no, it's not that, it's this formula. And that formula is the same thing. It's just completely wrong, which was, I mean, you don't imagine the Trump White House doing a balls up, but there you go. They've been caught out once ever, I guess.
So the effect that it's had overall on the markets, this madness, is we've lost, the markets over the past 3 days have lost, stay with me, $5.4 trillion in value.
Yeah, it was a trillion it was 4 trillion in the last 24-hour period. And there was rumors that Trump was going to cancel all the tariffs in the next 90 days, and it went up and it gained $1 trillion. And then when they found out it was a rumor, it just plummeted again gone again. And so if anyone can't now see that Trump is the reason that's the example. Trump do A, stock market go up. Trump do B, stock market go down. It's just all there. Yeah, you go, Craig.
And as a consequence, so if you think about that in terms of the value of what everything New Zealand produces, so if you took all of the produce, all of the goods and services, all of the GDP produced by New Zealand for the next 10 years, you'd get close to that figure. You'd need a little bit more. It would be closer to 12 years.
Yeah.
It's been lost inside 48, 72 hours.
Can we come back as well to the Nicola Willis thing? Because we're talking about the American tariffy type thing, but I'm interested, and we've already kind of mentioned it today, is that, my old mum always told me you save something for a rainy day. This government has cleared out the savings by giving it away in tax breaks to landlords, tax reimbursements to tobacco companies, all those really good things that they'll be remembered for. So they have nothing left for a rainy day. So I was wondering, is there a way for us to know, like, I remember you telling us that unemployment was going to be in the 4s, was going to go up into the 4s, but anything over like 5 is specifically due to the actions of this government. So what I want to know is how much of the next year, 2 year, 3 years, of hard economic times can we lay directly at the feet of this government versus these uncontrollable things offshore, which would have done it no matter who was in?
So the challenge there is that Trump's going to do what he's going to do, right? And that's going to happen. There's very little you can do to influence that. What you can do is influence your response to it, right? So if we see unemployment rising very quickly and GDP falling, we can respond to that very quickly by saying, well, okay, we're going to spend some money. We're going to have some stimulus. We're going to build some things. We're going to do some things in the country because we've got lots of spare labor. We've got lots of spare capacity. Let's make sure we're using the money, invest wisely so that when the economy returns to normal, 1, we've got the things that we needed in the first place, but 2, we haven't had the scarring effect of all of those jobs being lost and all of that tax revenue and all of that income being lost over that period of time, right? So you can't respond to what Donald Trump's going to do, but you can respond to yourself and you can manage your response. the challenge that Nicola has said, and that's what was in the piece that you put forward, is that she's not going to change course. She's just going to stick with what she had. And the thing that really terrifies me is that she said our OPEX allowance is a ceiling, not a target.
Yeah, explain that.
Now, so the OPEX allowance, the operating allowance, is how much spare money we have to spend on day-to-day spending. So it's not buying stuff, it's just the day-to-day spending of government.
When you say spare money, the buffer, is it a buffer?
The buffer, essentially
Okay.
the new money we can spend every year.
Okay.
Like if you have a child and you give them a pocket money or an allowance, to use an American term, it's the allowance the government has to spend on new stuff every year.
Okay.
Yep. Now we have about, after we've spent all the things we've already pre-committed to, about $700 million left of that operating allowance. But we haven't spent any money on education at all. We haven't put the money aside to keep the lights on in education. So we need to take about $600 million of that $700 million and then use that to keep the lights on in education. That means we've got $100 million left spare new cash. The Crown spends approximately $129 billion. So these are the kind of margins of numbers that the amount of new money is absolutely tiny. What she's really signaling is that we're in for more cuts. We're in for much deeper cuts than even they had thought of a few months ago. We've just had a defense statement yesterday where we're going to spend $9 billion from where Lord only knows, because we don't have $9 billion of spare money over the next 4 years in total. So God only knows where that cash is coming from. We don't have any money, and Tamatha might have enjoyed this. We don't have any money for the 500 police we're supposed to be recruiting. We don't have any money for the going.
Hang on, Craig. Craig, don't exaggerate. It's 487 to go. It's not 500 makes it sound like it's unachievable. There's 487 to go in the next 9 months. That's at least we try and be accurate on the show, Craig. You should know that.
And I feel confident. I'm buoyed by your confidence there, perhaps. But I fear we may be some way off what Mark Mitchell used to refer to as an iron target, but now refers to as an what did he call it? It was an ambitious target, or it was it was
aspirational. Aspirational was his word, which is great. I have an aspiration to get my summer body ready and get a six-pack. It'll happen.
I'm aspirationally 6 foot tall. So in terms of I'm aspirationally still youth adjacent. So in terms of all of this, what we're really signaling here is that there's no money. That the programs that we thought we were going to have, we probably can't afford. The economy is heading a bit further south. So global growth, according to the forecasts, is now going to be falling by about 0.5% from previously expected. Unemployment will be higher than previously expected. Inflation is going to be 0.5% higher than previously expected. What does that mean? Interest rates will be higher. Because interest rates will be higher, that means we'll see less growth. And so things will get tougher and tougher and tougher. And that's the real challenge.
But Craig, surely having a great economic mind like Nicola Willis basically say, damn the torpedoes, I'm not changing course for any reason. This isn't our fault, so why should I switch things up? Surely that's something that we can all have confidence in, that we know that the path is straight ahead.
Well, I mean, there's a very famous phrase in government administration, which is that would be a courageous decision, Minister, which is always code for perhaps or brave even. That's not something that necessarily you should do. Keynes famously said that when the facts change, so do my opinions. Well, right now the facts have absolutely changed on the ground.
It seems to be the thing where, like, I accept, because we said this for the last lot, when external forces change situations, outcomes can be different. Things that you promised may not happen. You know, I'm looking at taking an overseas trip at the end of the essay, but then a day before it, I break a leg. Things have changed. My outcome is going to be different. But just to stay there and go, we're going to stay the course. It's like, well, how does that work if everything's just got more expensive, if incomes are going to drop because our exporters are going to face, you know, less being purchased off, if everything's changed, everything, and even you're going ooh about the economy, it seems to be irresponsible, it seems to be inauthentic, it seems to be bloody minded. I mean, like, at least to say today, we're going to try and keep things as they are, but we're going to have to, you know, add these new activities into the equation. But just to be straight away, nope, nothing's going to change. Really? Just, I don't get it. It feels disingenuous at best.
I think I've been on the show before, Pat, where, you know, I've said occasionally this government feels like it doesn't have a sort of a worldview, right? What it is, it's a 3-year-old having a tantrum. It knows what it doesn't like, but it doesn't know what it wants. You know, want you to eat this dinner? No, I'm not going to eat it. What do you want? I don't know. I don't care. It knows that it wants to deliver the package that it wanted to deliver when it was in opposition: tax cuts to public services, changing the nature of the economy to benefit those who already had quite a lot of cash. That's, you know, now it's faced with a different scenario. It just wants to go back to the way things were. It doesn't actually want to deal with the things in front of it. And the thing that I'd say here is that reacting to change is not the same thing as responding to change. So you can say, we're not going to react to the tariffs. We're not going to do something very strong, or we're not going to do something very immediately, but we can respond to this. We could have an industrial strategy that meant that we actually were growing different bits of the economy, so we were less impacted when these sorts of tariffs or these sorts of changes were put in place in the future. We could have a stronger economy where we had a stronger manufacturing base, so as a consequence, we actually weren't quite as affected as we might be because all of our industry is in dairy and timber and meat, which will be hugely affected by tariffs. We could try and take oil out of our economy, which would actually take a huge amount of the sort of the uncertainty out of our economy, because we wouldn't have to be paying for oil where it's, you know, the oil price is set globally and we've got no ability to influence that overall price.
Yeah,
we would also benefit because we wouldn't be chucking giant amounts of carbon into the air, and we'd all have a better fleet. So there's plenty of things we can do which aren't reacting, but we're not responding. We're not saying, hang on a second, we've got very close to a real disaster here. How do we manage our economy differently and better in future so that we can protect people's incomes? We can protect people's jobs. We can make sure our economy doesn't move about quite as much, in much the same way as I'm sat here in Wellington, and, you know, many of the buildings around here are earthquake prone, and we fix them so that if there is an earthquake, they don't move about as much. That's essentially the job that we should be doing in the economy in New Zealand.
Hey, Craig, it's always lovely to have you on. Why don't we just tell the whānau who have been living under a hole, under a rock, mix those two things together, about the brand new podcast. And let me just tell you, whānau, starting in April. We won't give you a definite date yet. We're still working on a few things. Locked Out with Craig Renney are going to be here on this platform. It's going to be on, in fact, I made the Spotify account for it today, Craig. So we're getting it all ready to go out. So sooner rather than later, whānau. Tell us, Craig, what you want to do with this podcast. What is the objective of your brand spanking new podcast? What's it going to be about?
Well, it's just shameless self-promotion, really, Pat. But beyond that, it's really about looking at the numbers that are out there in the world that get told to us as either being true or important, and saying, actually, does that make sense? Where does that number come from? Does it mean anything? Does that statement, does that economic story hold any truth? So, for example, when you all get told that we're going to solve supermarket competition by getting rid of one supplier or breaking one supplier, is that actually going to make anything cheaper here? when we get told that actually energy prices should come down, well, what's been the story for energy prices in New Zealand over the past 10 years, and why should we care? When we look, for example, at GDP numbers that come out, or unemployment numbers that come out, and we keep being told there's green shoots and things are getting better. Really? For who? And why? And so that's the story we want to unpick and tell people in a way that means something to them, so that they can take that away and talk knowledgeably about that to their friends. But actually, that means this.
I joke around saying it's you're going to be nerding out with numbers, aren't you? Basically.
Oh, mate, it's the best. But importantly, breaking it down so that the viewers or the listeners can take it away and basically say, "Nah, I now have a more useful piece of information, so I can inoculate myself, so that when I hear that lie again, I can go, it's not true." Or when someone says something is a really big thing or really fantastically important, no, it's not, and fairly meaningless. Or actually, a small thing that appears really tiny, small changes in child poverty numbers actually make enormous differences to end people's lives and to the costs for the government and various things. So it's about trying to unpick those things and make them clear for everyone following along at home, so that they can sound more knowledgeable, and they too can get chucked out of parties for being a bit dull like me.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Craig. It's been a pleasure as always, and thank you for giving those updates, as scary as they sort of are overall, but best to have the knowledge and know what's happening.
I have one small favour to ask, perhaps, just before I disappear. I'd like to come on in the future to talk about something nice, because I've realised the past 3-4 times I've come onto this show, it's been I've been delivering essentially bad news.
Right.
Oh, yes. Sorry, that's not our market.
Maybe you need to have a close, personal, intimate conversation with Nicola Willis, and because if she keeps feeding us bad stuff to talk about, what are we to do? Have you got a dog, Craig? We talk about dogs. Do you have a dog?
I don't have a cat, as has been previously disclosed.
We don't do cats
on this.
No, we don't do cats.
That's 2 strikes, Craig. You're on thin ground.
EVs. we talk about EVs quite a bit. You got an EV? Drive an EV?
No, I have a Subaru. I'm the proud owner of a 2018 Subaru. So
3 strikes. Wow. You're out. You're out. All right, Craig. Talk to you soon. Thanks, dude.
Right.
All the best.
It's great.
I thought we'd just break. Kiwi Bird, thank you for the super chat. Explain the tariffs. I think we sort of did that. Appreciate the super chat. And there was another one as well that I deleted, someone asking about.
The tariffs.
Wrong stuff.
Tariffs. You just take a rough idea that you half understand, you feed it into a machine that simulates a head injury, and then you take the equation that it gives you, and then you deploy that against the rest of the planet. It is hilariously dumb.
Speaking of head injuries, last week tonight, this week, and I've seen there's been a few people recommending it. The main story is on trans athletes, but some of the stuff that he shows Trump doing, oh my goodness, talk about a head injury. It's like, honestly, just how could it be anything other than that? Peter says Nats must be thanking their stars for the excuse. Rajan says, got an email back from James Meager. Sings Nat MPs even do the Labour bad shit in emails. It's in the Discord submissions chat if anyone wants to have a look. All right, there we go. Sorry, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
No, that's fine. I was going to go off on a tangent. Look, one of the things that National criticised Labour for was basically things that weren't in Labour's control. Such as the fact that inflation was out of control in the post-COVID world worldwide, and us as an import-export nation were just really exposed to that. So by the same logic, this thing that they can't control either, Trump going off the fucking deep end and affecting all of our import markets, all of our export markets, that's National's fault. Why aren't they fixing it? Are they just stupid? Like, you are going to get called up on the same things in the same way that you criticize the other guys. And like, I am legitimately worried that we do not have a finance minister that has a good understanding of international finance, global economies, and how this affects it. She's not going to come up with a way to navigate this. We are adrift, and we'll just go where the currents take us, whether it's good or not. And it doesn't feel like it's going to be good. There's a lot of chat. You know, we've been making jokes about don't check your KiwiSaver, don't check your KiwiSaver. I kind of want to expand on that because it was something that I heard around when COVID kicked off, and the same sort of turmoil in the international trading markets and stuff like that. Don't check your KiwiSaver. Don't make changes to your KiwiSaver. The temptation there is, if you mess with your KiwiSaver, because it's over such a long term, if you make panic decisions now, what you're actually doing is locking in the losses. If you change the type of scheme that it's in, it's actually, like a lot of things, counterintuitive. You kind of want to have your share, whatever fund you're in, to be more aggressive, because they will scoop up shares while they're cheap. And then when this all is over, they will rebound. But if you take it all out, you're taking your money out when it's at its lowest and it hasn't had a chance to rebuild itself or bounce back, you'd lock in those losses.
Yeah.
I am not a financial expert by any means, but I listened to people that had a bigger brain about this around COVID. That's what I did with my KiwiSaver, and it worked.
Question.
And saying that, I didn't follow my own advice, and I checked my KiwiSaver just before we went to air. My fund has gone down $2,500 in 2 days. So yeah, don't look at your KiwiSaver. It's not helpful.
I have a question. Do the people that you listen to, bigger brains, do they have bigger brains because of COVID? Like, is it a side effect of COVID, or
like a swollen up brain?
Yeah, like water on the brain. Is that what happened?
Or
That's why
worms? No, I try and avoid the people with COVID brain worms.
Okay. Might be, and I didn't say we're going to talk about this. You may not even know about this, Chewy, to be fair. We have had I wonder if I can find it. If anyone out there knows of a defamation lawyer, I'd be I'd be more than happy to hear from you. I'm just trying to find something.
What's happened, Pat? Have I defamed?
Well,
it's either someone has defamed you or I have defamed someone else.
So there is a piece right now up on Annie O'Brien's Discord.
Oh, is she taking a swing at us again?
Hell hath no fury like a leftist man defied. Goes through about all these terrible things that terrible leftist men are doing, yada, 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 yada. Lists a whole bunch of stuff, and then has a lovely gallery of some very, I have to say, very attractive men.
She's used this before.
Yeah. And it's particularly interesting because a week ago, a week ago, Annie O'Brien was all over my Twitter feed. Yeah. I don't engage. I've had her muted for months, actually. She was all over my Twitter feed. And now she's blocked me. So
of course,
it's very funny that I don't really engage with her. I have her muted. Well, it doesn't matter now. I've had her muted for look, you have muted posts from this account. And so what's happened is she's blocked me, and then she's released this Substack. And there are some things in there which are defamatory, without question defamatory. She doesn't mention names, but she lumps all of these attractive guys out there and says some pretty some pretty heinous things. I do find I'll read the tweet I put out because I do find it particularly interesting that she's had a crack at me several times. She tries to do the whole, you know, you and your big beard and you look revolting, da 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 da. And one of the things she complains about in that is people talking about her appearance, which is kind of hilarious. She also talks in the Substack about being a fan of, you know, the justice system or the correct justice, whatever it is. A huge believer in the principles of justice, all whilst releasing information on a Green MP outside the justice system that have enabled that MP to never be able to get proper justice because she's poisoned the well with the information she released. But apparently she's a huge believer in the principles of justice. So she blocked me. Not too long ago, either she has, or she was all over my feed until quite recently. As an aside, I don't think I've ever been on hers. I might have been on her feed if she tagged me, like responding, but I've never been on a post of hers like that I've responded to. Yeah, hilarious that she's crying over people attacking her appearance, but she's done that to me several times here on X, unless she's deleted those as well. She cries in her Substack she is a huge believer in the principles of justice while fomenting a mob after a Green MP rather than taking the accusations to the police or the higher-ups in the Greens to enable justice, however it landed, to play out. It's pretty, it's kind of adorable on one level, although I do think, I really genuinely think if there is a lawyer out there who's experienced in defamation cases, I wouldn't mind hearing from you. bighearingnews@gmail.com. It's been that article has been shared by old mate Graham Linehan as well. So that's 800,000 subscribers, and often in defamation it gets more serious the more people it's reached. So I was like, oh, okay, we'll see. And speaking of that, Chewy, my mouse has just stopped, so I can't actually get off the screen. Can you just pick the two faces? You click on the two faces down the bottom just to get off that. I think you can do it, can't you?
The two faces down the bottom.
How you normally take unshare the screen? You know, just that one. Was that you or me?
Remove it. No,
Yeah.
I did that.
I'm gonna have to remove some batteries. So just talk away.
I've never interacted with Annie O'Brien ever, so I feel like I've been besmirched in an act of collateral damage. I think I just fit a profile for her, that I'm a man with a beard that has an opinion.
I mean, like, I encourage you, go and read it, see what she says about the people in that photo. Remember, she doesn't identify anyone with her claims, which means that imbues, is that the right word? That means it basically besmirches everyone. And that's why I'm saying it's like, you know.
Oh my God. As I've been quite vocal, I do not dip my toe into Twitter anymore. But you've made me because she's blocked you. And I was like, oh, I wonder if she's blocked me. No, I'm not important enough to block Pat. You know what that means?
What's that?
That means I can make comments on her post. I will think about this. And I can either take the high road of being intellectual and challenge her in the marketplaces of ideas, or I could just spam her page with gifs from what was that movie with a male gigolo? They just had Juice Bigelow, male gigolo, where they had that constant throwaway thing where someone yells out, "That's a huge bitch." I could just use those gifs on a loop. You know, you don't have to be intellectual all the time. You can just be a real low-grade dirtbag, because I feel like that fits the Twitter vibe better.
Pretty funny, though.
I'll think on it. Like, I remember when we had some. She was on the working group, and let's just say she didn't come off like the brightest light bulb in the room.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Anyone can have a Substack, I guess.
Entertain the whānau. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, I guess we'll go through some super chats because they've been chucked on the deep end now. $2 for a contribution to the lawyer fee. Are we getting a pat groin on the Nala cam? That's unfortunate. Hashtag lawyer up from Peter. And I'm going to put up this comment from the start of the show because I can. Pat's gone. I can do what I want. From Mighty Coldy. Kia ora, guys, from a Kiwi expat in Germany. Been enjoying the look at what's going on back home. Yeah. I hope you're enjoying the vibe. It's unprecedented times, which we're all tired of now. We got batteries now, Pat?
Yeah, but I still have to put them in. Like, just keep going.
Come on,
This is live.
Do a quick reload, man.
We're live.
Like in a tactical situation, you'd be done.
I just get the sense that I replaced these not too long ago. Come on, you've got full control, bro. This doesn't happen very often. Use it.
No, it doesn't, and I'm terrified. There is one thing that I miss from being on Twitter, is the sniping and bitching. Like, Blue Sky's just too friendly and nice.
We could change that.
We could wreck the vibe very, very easily.
Are you just sitting? Are you reading live on the internet? Is that what you're doing? You've decided to read.
Yeah, I'm going to read. What else have we got? What else could we talk about? What else is on the docket, Pat?
Are you all lost?
I am lost because you just wandered off.
No, you're adorable. Don't worry, Daddy's home. You can call me Daddy. Oh, look at that. I've got my mouse back. All right, team.
Someone clip this. This is the best stuff I've ever done. Let's
get in the story. Yeah, poor old Chewy. They got all scared for a second. We'll finish up today. They're only short clips. They're only a couple of minutes each. So we'll go over, but not by too much. We'll go over. We've got no time limits. You know what I'm saying? So Chippy was on breakfast this morning. And I think it was Chippy who talked to us. I can't remember whether it was Chippy or was someone I saw talking. I might have been Kieran, actually, when we had him on the Sunday night. And it was talking about consultation and working in a bipartisan way. And he said, it's not really like that. What they do is they come and tell us what they want to do, and then they want to call it bipartisan. And Chippy talked about the Defence Force spending and kind of confirmed that on breakfast this morning.
The Prime Minister said that Labor was consulted about this plan. Are you happy with the discussions you had with the government?
I'm not sure I'd call it consultation. They gave us a call about an hour before they announced it. So I'm not sure that after they'd already approved it. I think that might be taking the definition of consultation.
It is actually weird as to why would the national government then say we consulted the opposition when what they did was gave them a heads up? Because consultation is a thought of we talk, they talk. You know, even if we don't come to an agreement, we still have an opportunity to share ideas. Going, hey guys, just so you know, in an hour we're going to say this. Click. I just wonder why National would feel the need to do that. Why would they feel the need to put out there that they've consulted with the other side about what they're going to say? It seems very strange to me, because there's nothing wrong with not consulting with them. So that bodes the question: why do they need to say they consulted with them? They didn't need to give them a heads up. They didn't need to do it in a bipartisan way. So why is the reason? What's in it for National to say we consulted with Labor? I don't quite understand it. They don't seem to win anything with it. It just makes them look foolish. Maybe it's just the evidence once again, Chewy, that they're not very good at this. Maybe it's just that.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Takes it a little bit too far. But look, I welcomed the phone call. It was lovely to know what was about to be announced before it was announced.
So if you were to be in government next term, how supportive are you of this plan?
This is the defence plan.
I mean, obviously, where the rubber hits the road is when the budget actually rolls around and we see exactly how much money is going to be put into it. Defence capability plans, when I went back and looked at the 2019 defence capability plan, it was talking about a $20 billion investment over the next decade. There's still, that's 10 budgets. And the same with this defence capability plan. What happens over the next 10 years will depend on the next 10 government budgets. And let's actually see what they come up with when that part of the process really hits reality.
There are currently 3 Navy ships docked as they don't have the personnel at the moment. If we don't have the crew, how do you think this ambitious plan can be achieved?
I mean, look.
Didn't you say something like that last night, Drew? They bought like 30 pieces of drivable equipment and they only used 4 of them or something?
Yeah, something. Well, actually, it was a couple of hundred LAVs. Most of them have never left a warehouse in Trentham.
It's a good band though, LAB. I quite like them. They're not bad. Queenstown based.
I mean, look, I've only had a chance to skim read it so far, but one thing that did strike me, and you could probably say this of the 2019 plan as well, I think the personnel aspects of that might be a little bit light. I think we've still got work to do to make sure we're building up the capability, the people capability of our Defence Force, and putting more money into a lot of equipment, is really important, but it is not the total story. We've actually got to invest in our people as well. That was something we recognised before the last election when we put quite a big injection of money into raising salary and wages for those working in our Defence Force, and we know that there's more work to do there too.
So the Labor government raised the salaries and wages of the Defence Force. The national government is putting whatever it is, $1 trillion. Is that right? $1 trillion, something like that, into defence, but none of that is anything to do with increasing of wages.
I just want to clarify my numbers on the LAV because I was massively out, but it's still a foolish amount. So the New Zealand Army originally had 105 of them. They've never been able to fully use them. We recently sold 22 to Chile. There's another 20 available for potential sale, and that's been increased to 30. And that leaves us with 73 on the books. Of course, most of those are sitting in a warehouse with no crews, with basically being used for spare parts.
Can we rent one for a weekend? That'd be fun.
Fuck, I would love to.
Are you listing New Zealand Defence Force? Well, let us come up for a weekend.
Back at the towards the start of the war in Ukraine, I sent an email, a question to, at that point, the New Zealand Minister of Defence, sort of going, hey, these are all sitting here. They're not being used for anything. Why don't we donate them to Ukraine? And the answer I got back was that they're not in operational condition.
Right.
They're not in the condition that Ukraine would accept them. They're not ready to go. So why did we buy them?
So they're all up on blocks with their wheels off.
It makes it sound like it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, this is what I say when I don't have a lot of faith in the government to necessarily make the right decisions for the Defence Force. You can go out and you can buy these big ticket sexy items like, we need to replace our Navy surface fleet. Cool. Do we have enough sailors to keep them going? Obviously the answer is not. Oh, we've got all of these armored vehicles in a warehouse. Are we using them? Well, no, because we don't have enough crews for it. And it's like, okay, well, that really sounds like we have a personnel problem. And so in that case, is it paying conditions? Is it career path? Is it how attractive that career is to people? That seems to be a problem that you want to solve. And that could be, look, here's your accommodations at Waiouru. It's a shed that we built in the 40s, and we've never put insulation in it. You'll be living in this for 2 years. It's that sort of thing. So is that going to be part of that? Or is this the government just going, yeah, fuck, we love the military. Makes us like it's kind of law and ordery. Yeah, we'll fucking do that. Money. Yeah, it's law and order adjacent. It's got the big shooting guns. So I just want someone to make sensible decisions, to sort of go, well, look, we can see that the way the world is going, and it's a big focus on drones. So we're going to do that. So that we need technically minded people. We want to have that. There's no point, like, and that comment that we hear from Judith Collins that we played last night was talking about like people launching ballistic missiles. If someone wants to launch a ballistic missile, there's nothing we can do about it. So don't even bother trying to compete in that space. What space are we competing in? We need to make sure that our defence forces can slot in like a fucking jigsaw puzzle piece into whatever Australia's got going on. That's the best way to spend money.
Indeed. Right, let's get to the next bit. The next bit is talking about the results. We didn't really cover off on this last night, but because you know how we feel about polls mid-season in an election cycle, they don't mean much. The preferred Prime Minister interesting, yada, yada, yada. So I do have one thing I want to say to Chippy about this. It's only 60 seconds, him responding about the polls from last night.
Mr. Hipkins, just want to move on to our latest One News poll. Labor dipping slightly to 32%. You're up 3% though as preferred Prime Minister at 20%. What more work do you need to do?
Well, all the polls since the election show that Labor's support has been increasing since the election. There's a bit of variability in that; they bounce around a little bit. But overall, I'm comfortable that we're getting our support numbers up. We're certainly doing better than we were in the run up to and following the last general election. I know that people want to hear a bit more from us about what we would do differently. It's the nature of the electoral cycle that at this point in the cycle, you're largely commenting on what the government's doing rather than talking about how you would do things differently. But as we head certainly towards the second half of this year and into next year, we'll be talking more about what we will do differently. And I set out earlier in the year that jobs, health and homes are three key priority areas for us that you'll hear more from us on. And I think those are the sorts of things that Kiwis want to hear us talking about.
So there's one thing I want to say to all this. All sounds great to me. It's a good little segment, good, nutshell, jobs, health, homes, great. But it's time for Chippy to stop apologising. We had to take a year off. We went back and we learned, and we now got it back together. We made some mistakes. It's time for that talk to stop. It's time to stop talking about we weren't good enough at the last election, because the next election is, in 12 months you'll be in the blows, whatever the correct word is. You'll be in the middle of absolutely election season. So it's time now to start going, yep, we're the best group to take this forward. Stop going, yeah, we made a mistake last time. It feels like they're in a transitional period of that, but there was just a little bit of that on the side as well when he was talking in there. So stop it. Yeah, like Jason says, let's go mode. It's time to go. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things I would say there. Just the language on the chyron there of like, Hipkins surges 3%. Still margin of error stuff.
Margin of error.
It's not a surge.
Every result for every part of it.
It's a margin of error. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about this. We'll keep reporting on every poll that comes out, but I'll keep saying the same thing. Trend is the only thing that matters.
Well, and that brings us back to my last clip. It's actually not from breakfast. It's from the TVNZ News tonight, where they were talking about how the country felt about the leaders. I'll give you a preview of probably what the image is going to be on the thumbnail tomorrow, because I know you love it.
What's the caption for that? Ha ha, you're poor.
So this was on One News tonight, last 90 seconds, just talking about how the country thought the leaders were doing.
One News asked voters to rate how they're handling their respective roles. For Christopher Luxon, 40% approve, but 47% disapprove. Approve minus disapprove gives Luxon an approval rating of -7. That's a 2-point drop from when we asked in June last year. For Chris Hipkins, 49% approve, 33% disapprove.
It would be interesting to talk to someone who knows, a pollster or someone who's worked in the industry. Is this sort of common for Prime Minister versus Leader of the Opposition? Does the Prime Minister, no matter who they are, typically get judged more harshly? Because obviously the Prime Minister's a bigger, harder job to do. Leader of the Opposition can basically do whatever they want, say whatever they want. I wonder usually what it would be at like halfway through the first term of whatever government. Is this common? Because I don't think they're saying this. Like, I'd like to know if this is not common, because if this is not common, that speaks to Luxon's leadership. If this is normally the way it is, then it kind of means nothing. Maybe someone can inform me about that if you're watching.
Giving Hipkins an approval rating of +16.
Because the difference between that, if that's not normal, the difference in those numbers is significant. It's a 23% difference. It's huge.
Up 3 points. The difference between the two leaders clear. Christopher Luxon struggling to get cut through.
You're the current Prime Minister. Why are they not getting behind you?
All I'd say, Mikey, is I was elected in October 2023. My job's pretty clear, which is to deliver for New Zealanders. That's what this coalition government is doing.
So the question was, why aren't you getting cut through? And the answer was, they hired me. La, la, la.
Communication style doesn't resonate with Kiwis, certainly the ones I'm talking to anyway.
Case in point, this now infamous interview drawing brutal honesty from Luxon's own MPs.
That particular interview, yes, he could definitely improve on his communication at times like that.
He's really warm, he's really friendly, and I don't see that coming across, say, on the news or on the TV.
It's true, Christopher Luxon resonates better in person.
I was with him on the weekend and he was mobbed.
While Chris Hipkins is performing better now, during the election, he struggled to connect with voters.
I decided after the election, and I said this at the time, I'm going to be myself for the next 3 years, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
There you go. That was the last bit about leadership. I just thought that tied in nicely to the bit from the polling from this morning. So I mean, like, you know, credit where credit's due. Those national MPs kind of went, yep, he could have done better. Don't very often hear that from an MP. I guess what that shows is that interview was so very, very, very bad that they've decided,
no
look, we
spin
can't spin this. Like, I think I've told this idea before. It's like working in radio, especially working in music radio. There's this thing that you don't acknowledge any mistake you make on air unless it's unavoidable. So I started working for More FM and we were playing off CDs. Most stations were using just computers, but we were still using CDs because the bosses like their announcers to be active, you know, not just sit there in front of a computer. And so, in other words, you made a little mistake, you don't bring attention to it, because what happens is, like in most professions, the people in that profession know that there's been a mistake, but 99% of the customers, i.e. the ones listening, don't. But if you like flick a CD off that's playing live to air, it's very obvious, you acknowledge it. I look at those guys talking and I go, yep, they've flicked the CD off. They can't not acknowledge it. It's so bad. Kind of pretending it didn't happen would be worse than being critical of dear leader, Chewy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Chippy needs to just ride the fact that Luxon is not good at this. He can even take that phrase, I don't mind, I won't charge a fee, because it's transparent. Like, people might still think that National's on the right path, but I think that is eroding massively. Colloquially, or anecdotally I should say, I see that here with voters that were very pro him coming in. They don't like him. He's not authentic.
I think that's because they were anti-Labor rather than pro him. I think that's what you're saying.
I think even that they were pro-national.
Yeah.
And at that point, like when they were talking about Luxon coming in, he was always from day one mentioned as a potential or a likely leader. And then he comes in and this is what we get. And we go, who the fuck was saying that this guy was going to be a potential prime minister? There was a comment there that he's a warm and bubbly person. I have never seen that.
Yeah.
In any of the way that he presents in the House, in front of media, the way he talks in interviews, it's not genuine. It's not like how a real person talks. So is there just a completely different Chris Luxon that they have seen that we don't get to see? Now, for all of Hipkins' flaws, I think he is genuine. And I think sometimes his missteps are in his attempts to play the game.
Right.
You know?
Right. So he knows how to boardroom. He doesn't know how to ninth floor the beehive room. So the missteps you're seeing are him going, I need to be ninth floor beehive guy, not boardroom guy. And that's where you're seeing the flubs.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there is so much, like there is a dearth of ammunition that Labor can pull on at this point. They have gutted services that every New Zealander needs to use. And I think if there was an uptick, you know, like if people's grocery bills had halved,
yeah,
you know, you're kind of gone, oh, okay, well, there's a direct correlation here. They've sacked a whole lot of people, but my grocery bill's gone down. My mortgage is more manageable. Look, I can live with some of this, but there isn't. There's been a massive gutting of the public service. Our health service is on its knees. Like there's big societal issues. And I think when you go to the leader and you go, hey, look, what do you think about this? And the first words you're going to get, you could bet the farm on it. Look, Mikey, what I'd say to you is this. Every single time, like, it grates on people. It's a vocal tick. It's a crutch that he relies on. And it is always, this is a rehearsed comment. I was ready for this. It's not a natural reaction. It's not a comment that comes from a place of thought or consideration. He's an empty shell. He is a corporate. He's a corporate dude. The shit would fly in a boardroom. It does not fly in something where you hear from this guy on every single issue, and all of them. He's not responsible for anything. He doesn't even have a portfolio. He says that his area of responsibility was leading the party and leading the country. But on every single issue, he will defer to another minister. Every single one. And outside of that, you just get platitudes. It's transparent. He promised the most transparent government we've ever seen, and he's delivered it, just not in the way that any of us would have wanted.
All right, let's get to some of these super chats. I'm gonna ask you one more question, Sherry. Hopefully, it won't turn into a half-hour chat, but we'll see. Peter on that defamation says lawyer up. Look, I also, ironically, I got a message from someone. It was at 9:34, and I don't think we'd talked about the Annie O'Brien piece. And the person who texted me said, just for your defamation safety, I don't think we'd talked about the other one yet. Bruce Emery was convicted of manslaughter, not murder. And yes, I'm aware of that. So if I said murder, that is incorrect. When Bruce Emery stabbed and killed the teenager for spray painting his wall, it was only manslaughter, not murder. I'm sure that makes the 14-year-old's parents feel much better. Bubba says lawyer contribution fee. Tiffany says Pat's gone, we can all revolt now. I hate to tell you, Tiffany, but I'm the most revolting, so you can't do that.
Hey.
Don't tell Pat, but Chewy is my favorite. David Arvid, get a wide mouse. No, I refuse. Amosy, late cash for $10. Thank you for the super chat. The poem says Old Navy boats equals new inter-island ferries. Now you're thinking the nice second-hand Corolla. Being John Key's mate is probably the only reason he got the leadership. Well, that and he was CEO of Air New Zealand, because apparently that's almost a prerequisite. Except the new CEO of Air New Zealand, the one who's stepping down at the moment, he's not bald. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but he could be our next right-wing prime minister. All right. I want to ask you a very quick question, Chewy. We all saw, I'm sure people have known the story about, what's his name? Campbell, the National Party member who's in that religious cult. Let me get it up.
Yeah, so lots of really sussy things about this. Like this religious group that he's a part of has no name, which is always good. There are, I believe, up to 40 allegations of sexual abuse amongst this unnamed Christian group.
Internationally, though, right? It's the FBI.
Yeah, between New Zealand and Australia.
There's no call that, what is his name? Something Campbell, Hamish Campbell, is any part to playing that whatsoever. However, what I am interested now, because because we've brought up Annie O'Brien tonight, Rory said on the post that I put out, she spent 5 days going on about Ben Doyle, but the moment a national MP is linked to a pedo ring, is that fair? I want to be very careful here with our language. I think that's probably fair. Linked to an alleged pedo ring is probably fair, because if it's his church and international parts of his church, the FBI are looking into it, I think that's fair. Not him personally, nothing like that. But it's interesting to say that another story comes up involving that kind of news. She goes silent. She's so blatant. Now, let me say from the very, very outset, I mean, yes, you could claim there was a connection if if you were connected to a church and somewhere in that church there was, bad ongoings, then you have a connection. Doesn't mean you have any fault or blame or criminal activity, nothing like that. No one's accusing you of anything like that. But I do just wonder, seeing the yardstick people have been using for the last week to talk about, pedo this and map that and that kind of stuff. I think I've just realized what our views have been down for the last couple of weeks, because we've been using the word pedo a lot in the last few shows. Probably literally part of the reason. Anyway, is I really do wonder how all of those people who have been going after Benjamin Doyle are going to respond to this. Now, I'm not suggesting it's the same. I'm not suggesting that there's any smoke or fire here for Hamish Campbell whatsoever, but I am interested to see if those who have been so very keen to scream about the safety of children say anything about this story. I actually don't think there's anything here. Well, I don't think there's anything here, Joe. Make that really clear. I was a part of the Catholic Church for 16 years of my life. Catholic Church were massive, massive sexual abusers. They hid sexual crimes. They moved priests around. Nothing to do with me. I'm no part of that. I'm just a part of the church that got caught up in all of that bullshit and had lots of horrific people attached to it. I can see Hamish Campbell is exactly the same situation. Zero evidence, zero accusation, zero anything about that. I still now would like to see how all those people who have spent 12 days, 7 days, going on and on and on and on and on about the safety of children, if they are still going to talk about the safety of children and attach his name to it. He hasn't done anything. There's no evidence of it. Nothing like that. Yeah, he didn't put a picture out of himself kissing his child on the mouth like David Beckham did. But I'm just interested. I'm interested to observe. That's what I'm interested.
Yeah, look, I think that's fair. Yeah, like I think we've talked before at the number of national MPs that have links to really weird sort of Christian sects, for lack of a better word. Just strange Christian offshoots and that sort of thing. And certainly this story, which is up on One News, I'm not super comfortable with. Yeah, he's part of it, but there's no allegation that he's done anything.
No, of course not. Look, I actually want to be stronger than that. I'm not even going to say there's no allegation. I've just been the past week saying to people about Benjamin Doyle, well, present the evidence and then we'll have the conversation. There's no evidence to present. Internationally, the FBI are looking at something. It's not even, I don't even want to go if there's anything there. There's literally nothing. But I actually kind of feel the same about Benjamin Doyle, because if you have the evidence for an arrest or a conviction, then present it, and no one has.
Yeah.
So it's as black and white as that to me. I believe in innocent until proven guilty. The other side for the last week have been believing in guilty and then we'll see if he's innocent. So are you going to do the same? That's what I'm asking. I don't think there's anything there. I haven't done it for Benjamin Doyle. I evoke the words of Ronald Reagan. It's best to test and verify. Same thing here. I'm not changing my position. If you're not changing your position, people have been going after Benjamin Doyle. What have you got to say now? That's what I'm asking, Chewy.
Yeah. And look, going by the information in the story that's up on One News's website, look, the numbers, like if you want to talk about the chances, like there's an estimate that this group has 2,500 members in New Zealand. There's a support group called Brave Truth Australia in New Zealand, and they've said that there's about 50 perpetrators in New Zealand alone. Neither the church or the police have commented when asked about that number. So, I mean, if he's one man out of 2,500 and there's 50 perpetrators, say, even if that's accurate, like there's a very slim chance that he's...
But hang on, what are you saying 50 perpetrators for? Are you saying if it was that number? I mean, we can say if it was one perpetrator.
That's what the support group, Brave Truth Australia New Zealand, has said that it has been told.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Way of saying that. That there's 50 perpetrators in New Zealand alone. Now, that's one group making a claim. So, yeah. I mean, I think this is... I mean, I looked at it because, like, these weird sort of offshoot Christian groups just sort of fascinate me, and there's definitely some meaty parts of the story where people have different names and rank. Like the church leader in New Zealand is known as the overseer, which just sounds fucking weird.
Do you know,
but
you know
the
the
story
KRS
is,
song, eh? Whoop, whoop, at the sound of the bullies. That's what he says in this. Officer, 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 overseer, overseer, overseer. That's what he turns the word officer, like police officer, into. Ironic that the whole thing's coming up around, you know, Tamatha as well. Anyway.
But what we've talked about this and the same thing with Benjamin, this story is a beat up as well. Like, as much as it's the other team, and as much as I'd like that this, well, like is the wrong word, that there be a reason to pile on a national MP, there is fucking not much in this story that is actionable or that you can point at this guy and go,
The only thing that's interesting about this story is that this person is connected to the strange cult. Like, that's the thing that's interesting. Like, it's like if someone came, if there was an ACT MP from Gloriavale, that would be interesting that they were from Gloriavale. It doesn't mean there's anything else to talk about there, but I'll say it again. And I know I've said this 3 times now, but I'm keeping the same position now about show me the evidence and I'll publicly comment as I did last week. For the people who didn't need convictable evidence to make their decision, what are you saying this week? That's all I'm saying.
And that's 100%. Like, if this was a story of like how many national MPs are part of weird Christian organizations,
that's
here's another one. That's a different story, right? We'd be talking about Simeon Brown. We'd be talking about the weird group that Luxon's part of that had to delete all their sermons off the internet before he became leader. All of that sort of stuff. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that has been released to sort of balance the pitch of like, well, here's another politician in a child abuse story. Has this been released as kind of chum in the water? It seems like a pretty weak fucking story.
Interesting cult, though.
And I think, it's so, like, I mean, you've got an experience in that religious world. I don't. It all looks fucking weird to me, but this looks especially weird.
I'm going to send an email off to these guys. I'm interested to find out more information about it. That's all. I love that kind of conversation. If you don't like it, sorry, we might be talking about it a bit for the next couple of days because I'm fascinated. Because I actually do fervently believe that what happens behind closed doors with the people who are going to make decisions for us that sometimes do impact our morality or what we're allowed to do with our beliefs, for example, the same-sex marriage thing, that what happens behind closed doors actually says more about the person. I'm the person who challenged Don Brash. I've played the audio here. I can play it for you again one day, about why would the public trust him when he's cheated on 2 of his wives? I asked him that question and he was like, blah, blah, blah. And then he went, well, it's a fair question. And he goes, and I said to him, how can a voter trust you if the person closest to you couldn't? And he goes, it's a fair question. And he talked about not judging the politicians based on their personal lives. He goes, you'd have a pretty small group of politicians. And I said to him, yeah, but you'd probably have a more real group of politicians. So I'm not saying I care what you do behind closed doors in your own life and that kind of stuff. But if you're going to stand up the front and say, I'm going to tell you what this country is going to do, I'm going to tell you where we stand in these issues, and you're being a hypocrite behind closed doors, that matters to me. That does matter. And by the way, I want to be clear. We've tangented away now from the other conversation. I'm not saying that Hamish Campbell is any kind of hypocrite whatsoever, right? I'm just saying in general, behind closed doors, what you do in your private life, what you do when you're sharing and speaking the realist you can be, if you're then going to stand up the front and tell me what's going to happen with this country, then that matters to me.
Yeah. So my response to that is Simeon Brown, leader of a anti-abortion group, and he said that wouldn't affect anything, and it's just a coincidence that as part of these health cuts that he's doing, there seems to be a lot pointed at abortion services and that sort of thing, and people are getting turned away because there isn't the resources to do that sort of healthcare. That's like, why would you connect those 2 dots? Right? So this is why I have a concern when these politicians bring in these beliefs.
Yeah.
And then, like, that's fine. If that's what you believe, Simeon, cool. That is something between you and your wife, you and your family. If you don't like abortion, don't get one. If you don't believe in gay marriage, don't get gay married. Don't be gay. You know, that's all good. That you do you. But when you're a politician and a lawmaker, then you need to compartmentalize that. You can go, well, I don't agree with abortion, but it is legal and it is healthcare. So shut the fuck up. Do I believe that he's able to compartmentalize that? No. No, I don't.
And on that note, Chewy, because we did stay for another 20 minutes.
2-hour show.
We will say goodnight.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can't afford. And the rest of us aren't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A in a self and a higher in mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's big hairy news.
Super quick, because we have one more super chat that came in just right at the end there. Ian says, an aristocrat uses the butter knife even when no one is looking. Our leaders need to act. It looks like it's a word between openly and honestly. Could be openly, could be honestly. It's open and honest. That's what we're going to leave it with. All right, team. Thanks for being with us tonight. Thanks to Tamatha for joining us. Thanks to Craig for coming along. Thank you all for being a part of this. And we'll catch you tomorrow night, live from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Anything from you, Chewy?
No, we've been here. Oh, well, I could go on a 4-minute tangent and get us to the 2-hour mark, shall I? No.
Yeah, I'll cut you off. Hooroo!
Cheers, man. No noise.